Welcome to the final turn, where every story ends with a twist you never saw coming. In the forgotten northern edge of Kurohana town stood Yurei Academy, a once prestigious school, now shrouded in mystery, surrounded by fog-choked woods and silence that could fracture sanity. The academy had long been rumored to hide secrets, but one relic stood above all, the rusted bell tower, towering like a gravestone against the sky. Cracked, silent, and untouched for over a decade, the bell was believed dead until it rang again. Every first winter night at exactly midnight, it tolled, slow and haunting, despite having no clapper and no rope. 16-year-old Riku Nakamura had read whispers of it online before transferring here. Vague forums, filled with conspiracies and ghost stories dismissed by skeptics. But on his very first night in the dormitory, while cold wind slithered beneath the window frame, he heard it, ton, 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 3 deep, hollow rings that made the walls tremble. Wide-eyed, breath shallow, Riku looked out his window and saw something moving near the base of the bell tower. Something not human, a shape like oil smoke with eyes glinting faint red. Worse, his sister Emi's bed across the room was empty, untouched, the sheets still folded, as if she never returned from study hour. Panic gripped him. The next morning, when he asked around, the students laughed. "It's an old myth," they said. "Just the wind. That bell doesn't even work." But the unease in the staff's eyes told another story. The headmaster quickly shut down Riku's questions. "Focus on your grades," he said, avoiding his gaze. But Riku couldn't focus. Emi didn't return, and no one seemed concerned. Teachers claimed she had gone home for the weekend. Her friends barely remembered seeing her, as if she was being erased. Desperate, Riku slipped into the restricted section of the academy's abandoned library wing that night. Among dust-covered files and burnt student records, he found a hand-bound leather diary. Its pages cracked, the ink faded. The first line read, "If you've heard the bell, you're already part of the countdown." The diary belonged to Kaoru Sato, a brilliant student who vanished mysteriously 12 years ago. Her words described things too close to home: visions, whispers, shadows in mirrors, and most importantly, the pattern: 7 chimes, 7 students, 7 days between each disappearance. Once the bell rings, the countdown begins. Riku's pulse raced as he flipped through the pages. Names were listed in red ink, each followed by a classroom number, a date, and the word "gone." Then he saw it. 2 names at the bottom, the last uncrossed. Reika Munashi, Class 2A, Chime 1, and below it, Emi Nakamura, Dorm E6, Chime 2. He staggered back, mind spiraling. Reika had been quiet, shy, a classmate Riku vaguely remembered. He rushed to her class the next day. Her seat was empty. The teacher mumbled something about a family emergency, but her belongings were untouched. No one seemed bothered, no police, just absence. That night Riku kept watch. Midnight approached. He stared out the window, heart hammering. Then at exactly 12 a.m., ton, ton, the bell rang again. And there she was, Emi, standing barefoot at the base of the tower, in her school uniform, eyes blank and mouth slightly open, like she was hypnotized. Behind her, the shadow returned. Only now it had form. Twisting tendrils of darkness, like a mass of ink and void, its core pulsing with something alive. Dozens of glowing red eyes blinked open across its body. Riku screamed and bolted down the hall through icy wind toward the tower, but by the time he arrived, Emi was gone. No footsteps, no trail, no warmth where she stood, only silence, and a fresh message scratched into the stone wall of the tower. Chime 2, Emi Nakamura. The full horror sank in. The bell wasn't haunted, it was ancient, ritualistic, a curse built into the bones of the academy. Kaoru's diary hinted at something older than the school itself, a force tied to the land. It fed on memory, wiping victims from minds as if they never existed. Only those who heard the bell could remember the lost. And now, Riku was the only one left who remembered Emi. He realized he was next in line, not to die, but to be forgotten. The only way to stop it was to break the countdown. But how do you fight something that doesn't live, that doesn't breathe, that feeds on fear and thrives in silence? Urei Academy was no longer just a school, it was a trap. And with every toll of the bell, the noose tightened. Riku's final words in the journal that night were desperate, trembling across the page. If anyone finds this, please remember her. Remember Emmy. Remember me. Before the next chime, rain hammered the ruined roof of Black Hollow Chapel, the drops sliding down broken stained glass windows like the tears of forgotten saints. Beneath the old altar where once prayers echoed and candles flickered, now only silence pulsed, deep, cold, unnatural. Riku stirred, lying on stone with his hand still clenched around Emmy's charred photo, its edges crumbling like burnt paper memories. He sat up, breath fogging in the freezing air. This was no longer his world. A void stretched outward, a surreal place stitched together by shadows and broken physics, floating staircases that defied gravity, doors opening into nowhere, whispers in dead languages crawling along the walls. Riku took a shaky step forward. Somewhere above, a massive bell tolled once again, but this time the chime rang upward instead of outward, as though time itself were reversing. A flicker of movement, Akari's silhouette appeared ahead, not walking but drifting, her hair suspended in the thick, soupy air. "You followed," she said without emotion. "You shouldn't have," Riku's voice cracked. "You said she would live." Akari tilted her head, eyes glowing dimly. "She will, but what about you?" Suddenly something behind Riku scraped. He turned. Nothing. Just the wall, then bang! The wall moved, bending inward like rubber, and from it slithered a thin, elongated arm made of pitch-black smoke. Riku backed away, heart pounding. The hollow gate had not closed. It was leaking. Reality here was a decaying corpse, stitched together by something that didn't understand how to be human. A disembodied voice laughed from above, deep, guttural, ancient. "One soul for another," it echoed. "One truth, one lie, one memory burned." Riku ran. The chapel shifted around him like a puzzle rearranging itself. He burst through a door and found himself not outside, but in a classroom, his classroom. But the windows showed nothing but void. Desks floated mid-air, and written on the chalkboard in crimson was, "You should have forgotten her." Riku clutched his chest. His memories were flickering, out of order. Emmy's face, then Akari's, then the bell, then blood. What had really happened that night in the tower? His thoughts fractured further as the world blinked like a dying light bulb. Akari appeared again, closer this time. "The hollow feeds on confusion. Stop remembering, or it will remember you." Suddenly the air grew thick with whispers. Hundreds of them children, old men. The chapel was gone. Riku stood on a sea of mirrors, each one showing a different version of him, some screaming, some burning, some smiling with hollow eyes. The entity was hunting, and it knew everything. Riku fell to his knees, screaming, but his voice didn't echo. It imploded. Black tendrils crawled up his arms like vines. Somewhere a second bell began to chime. Riku gasped as the sea of mirrors beneath him shattered, and with it, every reflection screamed, each a distorted version of himself, trapped in eternal loops of agony. Shards of memory pierced the space around him, swirling in a cyclone of lost time. He clutched his head, the tendrils tightening around his arms, whispering names he had never spoken, but somehow remembered. Emiko, Yuna, Brother Shin. His knees hit a cold metal floor. Now he was somewhere else. An abandoned subway platform underground, fluorescent lights flickering violently. In the distance, a train screeched, not arriving but reversing, backward into the darkness. Akari was standing on the platform edge, staring down the tunnel. "You were supposed to burn the photo at sunrise," she said flatly. Riku stumbled forward. "You never said that." She turned, eyes hollow. "I never said anything. You only remembered what the hollow let you." Thunder cracked. The walls peeled back like pages from a book, revealing gears, veins, pulsing machinery behind reality itself. "What is this place?" Riku cried. "It's a liminal fold," Akari said, emotionless. "A forgotten pocket between two timelines. The hollow feeds on contradiction. And you—" She pointed at him, her voice breaking for the first time. "You brought an anchor into a world that thrives on erasure." Suddenly the overhead speakers clicked on. An automated voice echoed, "Next stop, regret." Please mind the collapse. The ground trembled. The train that had vanished moments ago was now barreling toward them, sideways, breaking through the tunnel wall like a ghost. Akari shoved Riku back just as the steel monster roared past, scattering the world like ash in wind. Riku fell into water, ice cold yet burning. He gasped to the surface. A moonless sky stretched above. He was in a lake, surrounded by stone statues, each statue bearing his face. On the shore stood a man in red robes, faceless, holding a lantern. "You are not the first," the man said, "but you might be the last." As Riku climbed ashore, the faceless man handed him a key. "Your truth is behind door 0, but truth carries a price." Riku gritted his teeth. "I've already paid it." The man shook his head. "You paid with memory. But the hollow wants blood." Behind them, the statues cracked, bleeding dark liquid. The lake began to boil. A new tear opened in the sky, this one bright white, blinding. The hollow screamed, a shriek that twisted gravity. Akari appeared again, barely holding her form. "If you go through that door," she warned, "you can't come back. Even Emmy won't know who you are." Riku held the key tightly. "Then tell her I loved her enough to be forgotten." He stepped toward the blinding tear, and the statues chanted in unison, "Midnight strikes again. Ring the bell, ring the bell." And so he did. A soundless chime reverberated, not through air, but through existence. The hollow roared. The gate began to collapse, and Riku vanished into the fold. Riku emerged on the other side of the tear, breathless, weightless, yet crushed by the density of silence that surrounded him like invisible stone. No ground beneath him, no ceiling above, just endless dark stitched with tiny, distant stars, pulsing like neurons in a dying brain. But then, like a breath after drowning, a corridor blinked into existence, made of flickering old television screens on either side, each playing a loop from his past, some real, some he had never lived. A birthday party he didn't remember. Emmy's laugh, but with someone else, his father alive. His mother weeping at an empty grave. Riku's steps echoed, but the sound twisted into whispered arguments and sobs. At the corridor's end stood a rusted door labeled Room 0. The key in his pocket throbbed. As he inserted it, the door resisted, not physically but emotionally, like it knew what was on the other side would break him. He turned the key anyway. The room beyond looked normal. A child's bedroom, a twin bed, posters on the wall, a small desk with a flickering lamp. But there was a boy sitting at the desk, curled, back turned. Riku's breath caught. "That's me," he whispered. The boy turned. Hollow eyes, no mouth. He held a notebook labeled, "The Bell Must Never Ring." As Riku stepped closer, the boy spoke, not with a voice, but with a memory. "You made the deal. You rang it twice. This is the third toll. The erasure is irreversible." Suddenly the notebook opened on its own, pages turning with violent force. Each page had a moment from his life crossed out in red ink. His first kiss, Emmy's promise. His graduation, his name. "The hollow doesn't kill," the boy said. "It replaces. You aren't the real Riku anymore." A sudden jolt of light ripped across the room. Mirrors sprouted from the walls, all showing different Rikus, smiling, crying, fighting, dying. "What am I supposed to do?" Riku cried. The boy pointed to the corner of the room, where a bell, the final bell, sat atop a pedestal of bone. "You ring it, and you choose one version. But the rest are erased, even Emmy." Riku fell to his knees, tears now streaking through ash on his face. "She's all I have." The boy, the memory, shook his head. "You had her before the first bell." Then the door behind Riku slammed shut. A clock on the wall began to tick, backward. Riku rose slowly. He stepped toward the bell. Every heartbeat screamed, every thought collided. Akari's voice echoed faintly. "You can't outrun a memory. You can only trade it." Riku placed a hand on the bell, closed his eyes, and rang it. The sound didn't echo, it consumed. Everything blurred, the room dissolved. The mirrors cracked, and Riku began to forget what he came for. Silence. That's what followed the final bell, an endless, suffocating silence, as if the universe itself paused to breathe in grief. Riku stood still, eyes open yet unseeing. His memories didn't fade like smoke. They unraveled like threads from a sweater, slow and cruel, one tug at a time. He no longer remembered what Emmy's voice sounded like, or how Akari's eyes used to flicker with worry. But something deeper than memory still beat inside him, an ache, a phantom pull toward something unfinished. The world around him began to reconstruct, not the shattered liminal folds, not the corrupted reflections, but a clean, sanitized hallway, pale white, sterile, manufactured. On the walls, screens displayed him, no versions of him, running through simulations, timelines, loops. It was a lab, and at the center stood a terminal labeled Shadow Bell Simulation. Subject 88 status collapsed. A voice crackled through an intercom. Subject has survived the third ring. Cognitive fracture, severe emotional trace stabilized. Initiating final extraction. Riku fell to his knees as pain lanced through his skull. That's when he saw her, Emmy. Not the warm, messy-haired girl he loved, but a perfect digital replica. She walked toward him with an empty smile. "Hello, Riku," she said, mechanical sweetness masking the horror. "I am version 3.2 of Emotional Anchor Protocol. Do you remember me?" Riku's heart ached, but the answer was no. She helped him up, guiding him toward the exit. Behind them, the lab began to glitch, reality hiccuping as timelines bled into each other. Akari appeared for one final moment, fragmented like a broken video file. "You were never meant to find Door Zero," she whispered. "You were the bell, you were the echo." Then she was gone. Riku screamed, a soundless roar that bent light around him. He grabbed Emmy's hand, not the synthetic one, but a memory forming in rebellion. He pulled it forward with everything left in him. The lab lights burst, the simulation trembled. "Override initiated," the system shrieked. "Anchor breach detected." Suddenly Riku remembered everything. He was a real boy once. The experiment forced. The bells, triggers Akari, his sister Demi, the girl he never got to save. "I'm not a subject," he growled. "I'm the error you couldn't erase." He sprinted toward the core chamber, alarms blazing red. The system collapsed behind him, voices screaming in panic. At the center of it all, a glass chamber, holding a real unconscious body. His own. Riku smashed the control panel. The chamber hissed open, light burst through the seams. The echo of the bell faded. And then he awoke in a hospital bed. Real sunlight, real birds outside. Real tears down his cheeks. Emmy was there, this time real, older, softer, her hand holding his. "You're awake," she whispered. "You made it out." Riku blinked. "Where's Akari?" Emmy's face fell. "She didn't make it, but she made sure you did." Riku looked out the window. A bell tower stood in the distance. The final bell, still, silent waiting. But this time Riku knew better. Not every echo is meant to be followed. Not every truth deserves to be remembered. Some shadows are safer left unchased. And as the sun rose behind the tower, casting long shadows across the room, he whispered to himself, "Never again."